Mar Chatima Tova. Mount Everest is the tallest place on Earth, 29,029 feet above sea level. Reaching its summit is an almost divine feeling. Every year, thousands of people climb to the top of this famous mountain. A climber described the ascent the following way. I feel like a zombie who has stumbled into heaven. At the summit, I truly feel on top of the world, a euphoria I cannot find anywhere else. There's a famous line in the Talmud where heaven and earth touch. I believe this is why people want to get to the top of Everest, to see where heaven and earth touch, to be alone with the divine. But the reality of climbing Everest is not so euphoric. It's reported that climbers actually have to step over dead bodies as they try to reach the top. Climbers complain of theft and heaps of trash on the mountain. A young climber from Kashmir, Riza Ali, commented that he was stunned by how little empathy people had for those who were struggling. He said, I saw some people like they had no emotions. I asked people for water and no one gave me any. People are really obsessed with the summit. They're ready to kill themselves for the summit. The more I think about it, the less climbing Everest is like being in heaven. It actually sounds the opposite. You might wonder why I'm talking about mountain climbing on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, this moment, is a moment where Moses and Aaron were alone with God in the places where the heaven and earth touch. But this moment is not without tension. In the month leading up to Yom Kippur, Moses was on top of Mount Sinai alone with God. He was there because our ancestors sinned. They lost faith. They created a golden calf to worship. Moses smashed the set of tablets that God created by God's self, went back up to the mountain to carve a new set of tablets for another 40 days and 40 nights. Aaron, the high priest, and every high priest after him also had a similar experience of being alone with God. On this day, Yom Kippur, Aaron went into the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodeshim, to commune with God. I wonder what Moses and God talked about for 40 days and 40 nights, or Aaron the high priest and God on Yom Kippur in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the room only he could visit one day a year. Unfortunately, no one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. But I imagine somewhere in their conversations, they talked about us, humanity. It was out on Mount Sinai in a cave where Moses and God probably debated, is humanity worth saving? The Torah talks about that conversation a little bit in the book of Exodus. I'm going to paraphrase. God says to Moses, wow, this whole golden calf incident is really forcing me to reconsider this whole chosen people thing. Moshe, let's start over. Remember, this isn't my first rodeo. It was in another room where Aaron and every other high priest after him would be our defense attorney. If they walked out alive, so did we, the collective human race. On Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the world becomes a court. The shofar blast means court is in session. Humanity is on trial. The story of this group of people climbing Mount Everest goes around every couple of years. It's a story about what we think is the true nature of humanity. That's why we love forwarding it and posting it. The students of our greatest sages, Shammai and Hillel, had a debate. Would it have been better for humankind never to have been created than to have been created? The debate went on for 2.5 years. Hillel claimed the world would be better off with us in it. Shammai, the opposite. It's a mysterious section of the Talmud, and surprisingly, almost nothing is recorded about this 2.5-year debate. Beit Shammai, by the way, wins in the end. Even in our tradition, we struggle with the idea of the nature of humankind. The Everest story confirms what we believe. We believe individual human beings are inherently good and kind, but as a group, we're inherently evil. But I need to be honest with you, this assumption is just not true. I'm here today to remind you all of something very important. Humanity has the potential to be good. It's actually baked into our genes. I wasn't in the room where it happened, but I imagine that Moses and Aaron remind God of our greatest qualities, our chesed, our kindness, and our potential for rachamim, compassion. In his book, Humankind, A Hopeful History, author Rutger Bregman attacks the beliefs that we hold about ourselves, mainly that we are selfish and violent in nature. And that was actually the key to our species' survival. He argues that the opposite is true. Human beings survived because we're inherently friendly. We are the only member of the animal kingdom that actually blushes. Our face turns red. It's a tell that we feel love or shame. Our eyes, they have whites in them. They do not allow us to hide our emotions. They force us to show our true feelings to others. This is not exactly a good trait in a cruel dog-eat-dog world. During this pandemic, we've been bombarded by stories of human cruelty. Police officers preying on people of color, bands of rioters looting stores, people hoarding toilet paper and trying to sell it at a premium. But we have also seen doctors and nurses, grocery store employees and factory workers, essential employees of all types who have gone above and beyond the call of duty to care for other people. When patients suffer from COVID, they're in isolation. They are allowed no visitors. There have been stories, numerous stories, told of loved ones dying alone. But I've heard different stories. Those who died of COVID were not alone. Their hands were held by nurses. I've heard numerous stories of nurses who did not know the sick person dying of COVID hold that patient's hand as they took their last breaths. They held their cell phones up so loved ones could say their final goodbyes. They cried with the patient's families. Over 1,000 health workers in the United States alone have lost their lives contracting COVID, this disease, themselves. The story of these 6 months is their story, a story of almost unbelievable love and kindness. But that's not our whole story. I haven't forgotten about the people walking over dead bodies on Everest. I'm sure in the room where it happened, Moses and Aaron and God talked about the worst parts of humanity. As Jews, we know about this more than just about any other people. We have an entire service on Yom Kippur, El Ezkara, martyrology service, remembering victims of genocide and hatred. The methods of genocide are not as complicated as we think. When we distance ourselves from the other, when we say that some humans aren't actually humans, then humans are capable of almost unbelievable acts of atrocities. Remember, Jews were given numbers instead of names when they arrived at the concentration camps. The solution to human cruelty is rachamim, compassion. The word rachamim shares the same root of the word rechem, or womb. Rachamim challenges us to treat the other as if they were our own, as if they came out of our womb. How do we act with more rachamim, compassion in this world? Byron Stevenson, the acclaimed author of the book Just Mercy, lawyer and human rights activist, gives a two-word answer: get proximate. He says, only through proximity can we begin to see the things that we need to see. It will teach us things that we need to know, but more than that, it will teach us that we have the power, more power than we think we have. We've got to find ways to get closer to the poor, the neglected, the abused, the excluded, the marginalized, because It is in proximity to these communities that we hear things that we will not otherwise hear. We will see things that we will not otherwise see. It sounds strange to hear that we need more proximity in the age of COVID, but I wanted to share a story of how Israel did just this and also worked on rachamim, compassion, and chesed, love. Israel set up corona hotels for people who had tested positive for the disease and could not go back to their homes without potentially infecting other people. In fact, that's how most infections happen. Someone brings it home. The corona hotel at the Dan Hotel in Jerusalem stood out in particular. At the start, the manager of the hotel was asking people about their backgrounds to understand who to pair together as roommates. Orthodox Jews with other Orthodox Jews, secular Jews with secular Jews, Arabs with other Arabs. The first day in the Corona Hotel looked as one might expect. People ate their meals and generally spent time with people from their own group. But one day, a young Muslim woman, Aisha Abu Shahab, noticed this and decided to break the trend. She sat with Amram and Gina Maman, visibly observant Israeli Jews. In an interview, she later said, "They were laughing all the time, so I chose them." Over the next few days, the group at the Corona Hotel started bonding and crossing unexpected barriers. Aisha, the Muslim Bedouin woman, helped an Orthodox Jew while he was having an asthma attack because the paramedics were not able to get there fast enough, putting on all their protective gear. She wondered afterward whether she was allowed to touch him, causing her to ask her new friends about Jewish customs and laws in a way that she had never done before. An Israeli couple provided a young Bedouin woman with some life advice and counseling as she was contemplating her next steps and wondering whether or not she wanted to study to become a nurse. Both admitted that they previously had limited interactions with a person of the other group until that moment, and it opened their eyes, respectively, to Jewish and Bedouin culture. Noam Schuster Eliassi, an Israeli comedian, performed a stand-up comedy show both in Arabic and Hebrew, surprising both audiences and poking fun at both societies along the way. A few days into her time at the Corona Hotel, she said, "Where's all the problems? Where's all the prejudice? Everybody's getting along here in this hotel. What's happening here?" Life in the Jerusalem Corona Hotel provided an escape in which people were treating each other with compassion, as if they were from their own group and going above and beyond in maintaining health and sanity during their time together. But the ultimate test at the Corona Hotel came on Pesach, Passover, as the guests prepared for a Seder. The hotel had divided the group into two Seders, one for the Orthodox Jews and one for everyone else. The comedian Noam said, "It reminded me of the world that I'm used to before the coronavirus. It reminded me of our default, that we prefer separation rather than the compromises that come with uniting." Then together, the Orthodox community removed the barrier and all 180 guests sat together for a Seder evening together. Jews and Arabs, secular and religious, bonded by the shared experience of being in the Corona Hotel. These last months have been tumultuous here in America, and we thought we were divided before this. But the cruelty that we see in the news, the cruelty that we share online, it is not who we were meant to be. At the end of the 2.5-year debate between Hillel and Shammai, Hillel relents to Shammai. Okay, maybe it would have been better that we weren't created. But since we have been created, we have to examine our actions. When we articulate our sins out loud, we do not do so as individuals, we do it as a community. If one of us is guilty, we all are. But we can change. We can be better. The goodness really is within us, but it takes work to let it out. There's a famous story floating around the internet. An old man says to his grandson, "There's a fight going on inside me. It's a terrible fight between two wolves. One is angry, evil, greedy, jealous, arrogant, and cowardly. The other is good, peaceful, loving, modest, generous, honest, and trustworthy. These two wolves are also fighting within you and inside every other person too. After a moment, the boy asks, which wolf will win? The old man smiles. The one you feed. When Yom Kippur ends, we will break the fast. We will feed. It is up to us as to think about what we will feed ourselves with. Let's take a bit of Yom Kippur with us during this new year. Let's feed ourselves with chesed, love, and rachamim, compassion, and share it with others so that we can become closer to those whom we are distant from. I wish you all a Gemar Chatima Tova and a meaningful fast.